Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Covenant Security Solutions Learn at Lunch webinar series. I hope you all are ready for a fast-paced, information-packed presentation by Covenant's own Stephen Dillon. Stephen is an information assurance system architect and engineer with over 20 years of experience in the areas of information security, risk management, certification and accreditation, computer forensics, penetration testing, network software engineering. The list goes on. Stephen, we're so happy to have you speak for us today. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to you.
Thank you, Marjorie. We're going to start with a quick agenda here. We're going to do some myth busting first, and then I'm going to give you some bad news, facts, and figures, and then we're going to talk about what you can do about the problems that small businesses and medium-sized businesses face. So let's jump right into it. Like Marjorie said, we've got a lot of ground to cover. So for myth busting, there's a perception by small and medium-sized companies that they're not targets for cyber attacks, that they're too small, they don't have anything worth stealing. But the reality is that they store significant amounts of sensitive data. That includes things like personally identifiable information, PII, personal health information, and their intellectual property. It's also a reality that they face the same cybersecurity challenges and threats that everyone else faces, but they have to do it with limited resources, capacity, and personnel. And then the bottom line is the cyber criminals don't really care. They're not specifically looking at the size of the company. What they're looking for is vulnerable computer systems. So now for the bad news. There was 30 million new malware strains in 2013. That works out to about 82,000 per day. If you are a corporation, regardless of your size, and you have unprotected computers, or you have unpatched or out-of-date software, you don't have security policies, or you don't enforce them, you are basically providing a can't-miss target for the bad guy. This one is interesting. This was an experiment done by the Verizon folks. It was included in their 2013 DBIR, that's the Data Breach Investigations Report. That's kind of an important report for InfoSec folks like myself. We use that as a kind of a go-to guide for facts and figures and statistics about what's going on in information security. Anyway, what they did was they tried a little experiment to see how many emails it would take to get one click. And what they found was that sending out 3 of them gave them a better than 50% chance. If they sent out 6, it was a better than 80% chance. And 10 was a virtual guarantee. And when you think about normal phishing campaigns, you know, there could be 100,000 emails or 1 million. So that's a pretty good chance that you're going to get people to click on whatever it is that you want them to do. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be infected, that they may not necessarily have the vulnerabilities that the bad guys are trying to take advantage of, but certainly there's going to be a lot of clicks. A Centric report that came out in 2014 took a look at applications and whether or not they were potentially providing a SOX target. What they found was that 96% of the applications that they tested had one or more serious vulnerabilities. Think about that. 96%. That's almost every single application that they looked at. And the median number of vulnerabilities per application was 14. So this is one of the reasons why there's so many issues in information security today. Cisco, everybody probably knows that they provide hardware for the backbone for the internet. They also have a side business in information security. They monitored folks just under their umbrella. Okay, this isn't the whole internet wide. These are just the people that have hired Cisco in that service that they provide. 50,000 network intrusions every single day. Now, why is this happening? Okay, the bottom line is that data is money. And any data that has a street value, the bad guys are coming for. The equation is that if the target value is greater than the risk, then it's going to be hacked. And you need to think about what that risk actually is. A lot of these cyber criminals are sitting in countries where there's no extradition treaties, there's no MOAs or MOUs to prosecute them, and their own cybersecurity folks that they have, their police forces, are just not up to the task of handling that type of crime. And so their risk is relatively nothing. More information from the 2013 DBER. 75% of the data breaches were driven by financial motives, right? We talked about that. Data is money. Other ones that I want to point out to you, 78% of the initial intrusions were rated as low difficulty. And what we mean by that is that's the bad guys just getting onto the network. They're not actually stealing anything, but just getting through the protection, right? The bar was set fairly low for them. 66% took months or more to discover. So the bad guys were crawling around inside the network for quite a while before they were even found. More myth busting. Of the companies where they knew what the employee counts were that actually had confirmed data breaches, those with 100 or fewer employees amounted to nearly 40% of the breaches. A few more numbers. In 2013, there was 400 million credit cards, Social Security, and other PII stolen. We expect that number to go up in 2014, especially with Home Depot. I've seen just today Staples, Jimmy John's, Kmart. What breach of the week, it's happening constantly. 92% of the attacks were perpetrated by outsiders, so they're using your employees through phishing and water hole attacks and other forms, but it's actually it's coming from the outside, okay? Remember this, 76% used weak or stolen credentials. We'll talk more about that. 52% used some form of hacking, and 40% used or involved malware. So, what can you do about these problems as a small business, medium-sized business? Well, the first thing you need to do is understand what it is that you have. You need to take an inventory of your critical equipment, your hardware, your software, including version numbers, and you need to identify your sensitive and valuable data and inventory. Know where it is and what it is. You can't protect it unless you know what it is. You need to control access to it. You need to back it up. You need to provide training to your employees. Then you need to establish some guidelines. And we'll talk more about all of these. Okay, so sort of security 101 here. Implementing a technical defense. If you have an internet connection, then you should have a firewall, and it should be secured. That's going to be your first line of defense, okay? Sort of the defense in depth method here. You want to also then put a firewall on your host, an OS or software firewall, okay? Any employees that you have that are working from home, they need to make sure that they have a firewall. And then you can consider intrusion detection and prevention systems, or a DLP, a data loss protection software. Those are going to be a little more expensive solutions, but they may be worth it depending on what it is that you're trying to protect. Controlling physical access to computers, okay? It's a given that you do not want people you don't know, some person coming off the street, having access to your computers. So we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is employees, the people that you trust to come through your doors. Okay, they should have limited access to that data and information. Only the people that need it for their jobs should be given that type of access. Similarly, don't create user accounts for everyone on all the machines. Only create them as they're required. And employees should have separate user accounts. They shouldn't be able to share an account. Okay? Simple thing. Lock up your laptops when they're not being used or they're unattended. Don't grant administrative privileges to everyone. Only give those out to your trusted IT staff and your key personnel. Limit the authority to install software. and then don't provide the keys to the kingdom to one single employee. Of course, if it's a really small company, you know, that might be harder to do, but when you've got enough people, then a single person shouldn't have the full access to all systems. Your Wi-Fi networks, okay, you need to secure, encrypt, and hide them. And what we mean by hide them is don't broadcast that wireless access point, that network name out. And then you need to password protect access to your router and restrict the access. Only allow authorized users, right? Just because somebody comes up and finds an access point doesn't mean you should be giving them access to it. Passwords, remember I told you to remember 76%, okay? We need to require and enforce strength minimum, history, and expiration. What we mean by strength minimum is complexity and length. Okay, your passwords are made up from the keys on your keyboard, and there's basically 4 groups, okay? Numbers, symbols, and upper and lowercase letters. My recommendation is that you use at least 3 of those 4 groups. So it would be upper, lower, and then either numbers or symbols. If you really want to be secure, make your folks use all 4. Now for length, excuse me, the length, the longer the better. Okay, my recommendation is at least 12 characters. If you want to push that out to 16 and be real secure, that's even better. Change them regularly, every 45 to 90 days, okay? Teach your employees not to give out their usernames or passwords to anyone. There's just no reason they need to do that. While you're doing your inventory, find all your hardware and software passwords, whatever the defaults are, and change them. And then you can consider multi-factor authentication. What we mean by that is that a password by itself is single factor. That is something that you know. What you can do is add additional factors to that. So it could be something that you know and something that you have. And so something that you have could be, for example, a key fob that generates random numbers. Those numbers need to be typed in at the same time your password is typed in. So now that's 2 pieces of information. It could be more than that in a real secure environment, you know, government environment, other places where there's a secret processing going on. It could be something that you know, something that you have, and something that you are. So an eye scanner or a retina scanner or a fingerprint scanner. That's examples of multi-factor. Okay, general protection. You need to use antivirus and anti-spyware on all your computers, and they should be updated daily. Now, you can argue the efficacy of that, given that we already said, you know, there's 82,000 new forms of malware every day, but it's better than having nothing, and some antivirus, anti-spyware is actually free. Okay? You need to automate your security patch deployments across your organization if possible to protect against any of those software vulnerabilities. That's also why you need to know what those version numbers are, because the software vulnerabilities are almost always specific to certain versions. You need to utilize encryption. So once you know what that sensitive and valuable data is that you're holding, encrypt it and make sure that it's encrypted when you're storing it and when you're transmitting it. And then you can utilize logging for attribution purposes. Backups, okay? Make sure that you create backups or copies of all your sensitive and critical information. You need to establish a schedule to perform those backups. Okay, it would be best if you were doing them automatically, but at the very least, you should be doing them weekly. And then you want to store those backups away from your office. And the reason we recommend that is because let's say there's some type of a natural disaster, a fire, a hurricane, tornado, flood, something that destroys your office and your current data. Hopefully, those backups are stored far enough away to where they're not affected by whatever event that is. Training, this is an important one. Okay, you need to educate your employees about the cyber threats, things we talked about, the bad news, and more specifically, how to protect your own organization's data. You may have your own methods and your own information that needs protection in the way that it is done specifically for your organization, and your employees need to know what that is. Training should be scheduled routinely, and that's because threats are constantly changing. There's always new vulnerabilities found and new threats emerging. And so you need to update your employees with that information, okay? They should be able to recognize social engineering. Remember we talked about how easy it was to get just one person to click, okay? If you're training them to recognize that, those odds are going to go down. It's going to be harder for the bad guys to use that particular method to get into your network, okay? Understand and follow policies and procedures. And so once you've established those, and we'll talk more about what those are, but once you've established those, you need to make sure that your employees understand them and that they're following them, and that they know and can relate to what the violations of those policies are. So for policies and procedures and practices, you need to protect your sensitive information, and there needs to be rules for behavior for how to handle that critical data that you have. Internet security and appropriate use guidelines, and then use of your information technologies, okay? Is it all right for Mary to watch Netflix at work? Those types of things need to be discussed and written down into procedures. While you're at it, come up with some plans. You need a contingency plan. You need a continuity plan. How are you going to operate during an emergency if one happens? If you're allowing your folks to bring mobile devices in, you may want to consider a mobile device plan. And then you need to hold your employees accountable. Okay, there needs to be there needs to be penalties for violation, and those need to be enforced. Reporting procedures for lost or stolen equipment. Okay, if someone doesn't take care of the laptop when it's unattended, or someone breaks into their car and takes it, there needs to be an established procedure for what those people are supposed to do once that's been recognized. You don't want the bad guys getting on your network using a stolen laptop. And so there needs to be a procedure that everyone understands for how to report it and how to deal with it. Come up with security roles and responsibilities, and then consider a social media policy, right? That you need to identify what your potential reputation risks are, and this all sort of folds back into that appropriate use guideline. What is okay for an employee to do on company time related to social media? Physical security guidance, okay? There's a tie-in with cybersecurity and physical security, okay? When we talk about not allowing people to come in off the street, this is related to that. Okay, you need to monitor and control who's coming in. For visitors, check their ID, verify why they are there. Simple things like reporting broken doors and windows. Okay, you wouldn't allow that at your home, so report those to the building maintenance folks or whoever is in charge of where your offices are. You need to monitor and report suspicious activity. Minimize the amount of printed materials that have sensitive information on them. That's sort of a first step. But then when those documents are no longer needed, they're outdated, or you want to get rid of them, they need to be disposed of properly, okay, securely. Along those same lines, your electronic equipment needs to be done that way as well. You've heard of folks going on eBay and buying hard drives or equipment that ends up having all types of PII information on it, okay? The reason is because the company didn't dispose of that securely. Same thing with your trash, okay? You've heard of dumpster diving. You'd be surprised at how much information someone who's dumpster diving can actually learn about your company. And then you need to look at your mail security, snail mail, make sure that that is secure as well. Additional tips, okay? Don't open links or attachments in email from strangers, okay? I would take that one step farther, and I would say don't open links or attachments from someone that you weren't expecting it from. So I say that because once the bad guys are inside your network, they can masquerade as your boss or your coworker. So that's not a stranger to you, but you don't, if you weren't expecting to receive something from them, pick up the phone or find some other method. Don't use email. Find some other method of asking them whether or not they meant for you to open the attachment or the link. So just do a quick check on it, okay? Don't install or connect personal software or hardware. That goes back to your policies and procedures. Report all suspicious or unusual problems with your computer. You would be surprised at the number of times malware is actually caught or someone discovers that they have been attacked just because there's something going on the computer that is not right or that hasn't happened previously. Your public-facing websites, you need to protect all the pages, not just where you're collecting sensitive information or during a checkout, okay? Don't use the same computer, if you can help it, don't use the same computer to access sensitive data and then read email or surf the internet on it. Try to set a specific machine aside that accesses that sensitive data. And then similarly, don't use administrative privileges while reading email or surfing the internet. There's absolutely no reason why you have to have administrative privileges to do that. And the reason that we recommend that is because some attack forms take the privileges that you're currently running as. And so if you're attacked while you're surfing the internet as the administrator, you've just given the bad guy administrative privileges to your machine. Okay, how can we help you? Covenant Security Solutions is a full-service information security company. We offer vulnerability assessments and risk assessments as well as security engineering. We sell security tools. We have a behavior-based insider threat detection known as Insider Spider, and we also have a new tool that converges physical and cyber known as Sophia that includes travel incident management, and that's a tool known as Travelware. And then we can provide your employees with training. We have a catered system that we can use to give your folks the training that they need to be able to identify some of the things that we've talked about here. For more information, you can visit our website at http://www.covenantsec.com. Thank you for your time today, and we are going to move over and see if there's any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for such a wonderful presentation. I know for a fact that I really appreciate the fact that you emphasize the training portion. Once you set some policies and procedures that the staff is formally and officially trained. Do you have any recommendations in regards to some of the little things such as SOPs or acknowledgement forms that people need to actually create in order to keep an internal record of such training?
Right, if I'm understanding your question correctly, Marjorie, yes, that's part of the policies and procedures that are important to have and to enforce. Okay, I don't see any questions, and I don't see anything on my chat board either. So,
I guess.
Yeah, I don't see any questions or chat information in my list here. Direction.
So while you're waiting for some other questions, do you have any recommendations as to any particular sites that people can go to find resources in regards to actually establishing their policies and regulations, or are there any templates for anything that people can use to actually start getting things in place?
Certainly, there's several of them out there. SANS is a good place, NIST as well. Just Google searches as well, so that you could find a lot of places where that information is actually available. And in fact, the folks who were sponsoring the Cybersecurity Month have forms send links to forms themselves. So going back to sort of the parent producer of why we created this particular presentation. Those folks have lots of information.
So I guess this is a good time for us to even actually inform people of some of the wonderful things that Sophia is capable of doing in regards to situational awareness and in regards as well as, you know, inside of Spider. You want to go ahead and just give them a brief overview in regards to how those tools can help, you know, better prepare them in strengthening the security within their organization?
Certainly. I think the best thing to do for Sophia would be to watch our newly produced product demo. That'll give you a real good indication of what it can do. Again, it is a convergence of the physical and cybersecurity, sort of a central control room view into both of those worlds. It's a pretty interesting tool. And again, look on our website for information regarding that. There's a product demo out now that would be pretty good information for folks that have questions on that. The Insider Spider is also a very interesting product. It uses behavior-based data that it gathers, so it runs on your network for a certain amount of time and gathers information, and then it's going to observe user behavior to determine whether or not there's a threat detection from an insider.
I know for a fact that I've seen both tools at work, and they're really awesome. And it's great that they both can be customized to your particular organization in order to actually identify things that you want to report upon.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess that wraps it up. No other questions. I really want to thank everyone for participating and attending the webinar today. We actually have another action-packed webinar set up for next two Tuesdays from now. Tuesday, November 4th at noon, we'll have John Reganaghi, who is the Regional Liaison Officer at the National Capital Region for the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, MEMA, the Maryland or state form of FEMA. So John will plan to enlighten us on emergency preparedness for businesses. So actually, Sophia would be a great demo for that presentation, but actually what we'll do is actually help people gain an awareness of some of the little things that they could do in order to better prepare their businesses for any type of emergency that might occur within their office. So again, I'd like to thank you on behalf of Covenant Security Solutions. I'm Marjorie Perry, Director of Training and Education at Covenant, and I'd like to thank you again for attending our webinar, and I look forward to any other questions that you might have. Please feel free to contact us at iatraining@covenantsec.com. I hope to see you next week, or, well, not see you, but within the next couple of weeks on November 4th. Please attend our next webinar. Thank you very much.